Hello once again. So we're about to start our next panel discussion on mobility of tomorrow, faster, cheaper, cleaner, and safer than today. And this will be led by writer, journalist, and freelancer from New York, Sarah Murray. Please welcome her and the panel to the stage. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody, and I thought you might like to know that actually, despite saying that I'm from New York, I have lived there for a long time, but I haven't quite picked up the accent yet. You might spot that I'm British. So, but anyway, it's given me a great view of a city that really focuses on urban mobility. So it's great for me to be moderating a panel like this. So. We're going to be talking about the mobility of tomorrow, faster, cheaper, cleaner, safer than today, we hope. And our technologies are going to hopefully enable us to do all this. But I think some of the really interesting things that we'll be discussing on this panel is the way that autonomous and electric vehicles are really sort of turning the mobile ecosystem around. We have an opportunity to almost reimagine how our cities are, rather than just sort of tinkering at the edges of the transportation system, as we call it in the old-fashioned terminology. So I think we really want to think in a very sort of futuristic way about this. But of course, as we get there, there will be challenges as well. And I think some of the most interesting ones are not necessarily technological, but ethical. The decisions made by autonomous vehicles. We humans have to program them to make those decisions, and those are going to be quite challenging questions to ask. But here we've got a great lineup of panelists who are really going to be focusing from the sort of, what can governments do, private, public sector working together. Obviously, this is an area where collaboration has to be key, and how can we make those partnerships most effective. And I think the final thing we will probably touch on is the whole question of accessibility and affordability. These technologies look very exciting, but what we don't want to happen is that they become exclusive and that only a certain segment of the population can participate. So we have here a great lineup of panelists. We have just next to me here, we have Dario Nardella, who's mayor of Florence. And I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion, because talk about sort of high technology in one of the world's most ancient cities is going to be really fascinating. We have Dr. Aishia bin Bashir, who is Director General from the Smart Dubai office of the government, which is really, she's responsible for the entire Dubai Smart City program, the transformation, which is a fascinating one because it's so integrated and holistic. And I think we'll talk a little bit about how mobility fits into everything in the smart city. Then we have Dr. Seong-ik Oh, who is Director of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport at the government of South Korea. Now, as we all know, this is a great advanced technological nation, but I think it's so interesting that we've got, these broad responsibilities, land, infrastructure and transport. They're also integral to the whole mobility picture. And then we have Xavier Grau, who is Director for Barcelona and the Balearic Islands for FCC. Now, this is a company that is delivering urban services, infrastructure, construction, and water treatment. Xavier is particularly responsible for the urban services side of that. And I think he'll be able to give us a good view on how the private sector needs to work with city governments. So I'm actually going to start ladies first, and I'm going to ask Dr. Aisha, just give us a picture of some of the latest mobility-related advances in the city, and how are they fitting into the government program overall?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. I'm happy to be part of this panel with these panelists. Talking about Dubai and their autonomous approach, actually in 2016, Dubai autonomous strategy being launched with a target of transferring 25% of our mobility services in Dubai to be autonomous by 2030. And this leading to a saving of 22 billion of dirhams in annual economic revenue across several sectors in Dubai. We launched many tools in Dubai. I'm sure that you've heard about the drone taxis. It's been tested in Dubai since 2015, and now we are in the last phase of launching it. In 2009, also, we have our driverless metro, which is the longest driverless metro in the world. Last month, we've launched the driverless taxi, and it's been running in different districts in our city. Our target for our autonomous cars in 2020 to have the whole Expo experience, Expo 2020, to have autonomous cars in that event. So we've done many components when it's come to autonomous cars, but still the sky is the limit when it's come to technologies. Every day with the new technologies coming to the city, we need to think in different layers, not only putting those tools or vehicles in the street, but also how to manage the data that will come out of it, how to link it with the IoT system across the city and across different sectors.
And talk a little bit about, you mentioned their data. I think Dubai has such an interesting model of open data, but also data that's captured within different departments. Tell us how that fits into the whole mobility picture, the importance of data and open data.
Today, talking about mobility, you know, there are different tracks in mobility. You have trams, you have metros, you have buses, you have taxis, public, different type of mobility tools in a city. So one of the major component for our data is to collect all these data in one platform or a big data platform. And that's what Road and Transport Authority in Dubai done. But also, from a city perspective, we launched, I believe it is the first data law from a city perspective that govern how we deal with the data. We need to classify our data. Not everything is, we can classify it as open data. We need to make sure that there is a privacy and security to take care as a heart of that policies in our city. Normally, private sector asks government entities to open their data, but also how private sector can open their data. Someone like Uber or the equivalent to Uber in Dubai, which is called Careem, how they can share also their data in one platform with our Road and Transport Authority data and give our citizens this kind of information that will allow them to choose what kind of mode of transportation in our city. So yes, we have a full-fledged entity in Dubai called Data Establishment that govern the data, put policies and regulation around it, open data, but also run the digital backbone of our city, which is called Dubai Pulse. And I invite you all to visit our stand to look into the different dashboards that we build from the data. The data is not only coming from transportation. The data come from energy consumption, data come from economic sector, tourism sector, and the blend of these data can give decision makers a more mindful perspective of their cities.
Data is so critical to everything we do now. Dario, I'd like to ask your perspective on this, because one thinks of Florence and this beautiful ancient city, and I have to say it had never occurred to me that it would also be a smart city. So tell us a little bit about how these new forms of mobility, including data, fit into a very, very ancient infrastructure.
Yes. Thank you to be here, and welcome to all of you. So first of all, I would like to say that I'm sure that mobility is the real challenge for all the cities around the world. So how you can move people in your city, this is a real question if you want to give an evaluation about all the cities. When we talk about the historical cities, the challenge is double, because you have both to conserve, to protect cultural heritage, and you know how big is in Florence our cultural heritage, and how you can develop the new instruments and way for mobility. Our vision for green sustainable mobility in the cradle of Renaissance is based on three strategic pillars. One is pedestrian area, the second is sharing mobility, and the third one, public transport and e-mobility, electric mobility. Florence has the biggest pedestrian area in Europe. This choice began 2009, 2010, permit to enjoy the city, not only for visitors, for tourists, but also for the people. And we know that the impact of visitors in cities is very big, nearly 15 million of tourists each year. Calculated according to the mobile analytics. We have a project shared with Vodafone, a big company, to have a daily control and all big data about the visitors in the city. But not only tourists are in the city, we have commuters, residents, students, so the city users coming from the region of Tuscany and the metropolitan area. Around 600,000 people daily, and you have to consider that we have 370,000 inhabitants, so practically it's 100% influx of people living in the city during the day. And for this reason, we have this second strategy. So we have to give to the city users the opportunity to leave their car, and public transport and sharing systems, bike sharing. We have the free flux bike sharing, and we are launching also the electric bike sharing, and also tramway lines. We are finishing 2 tramway lines. The third one close to be realized together with a public transport fleet of bus and electric buses in the historical center. Finally, electric mobility is another way, because we have also to consider how we can decrease the pollution. Also because pollution is a big risk not only for people but also for cultural heritage, for monuments. And we spend each year more than 15 million euros to keep our cultural heritage. So if we decrease the pollution, CO2 emission, we can have much more positive effect also in order to keep and to conserve the cultural monuments.
And as probably a cost saving as well, if they don't get dirty in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Electric
absolutely.
mobility is a good investment for the future,
Yes.
especially for the historical city.
And you mentioned there are a huge range of different forms of transport. How, with technology, can you manage to coordinate all these different forms of transport? You know, from the electric vehicles to the shared bikes to the, get
Yes.
a big picture of the whole thing.
We have a big control room system experimented last year, but now we are experimenting also a system open to the citizens. Also because we have a very good performances for big data using, and for example, in this moment on my phone, I have the dashboard of the city. Unfortunately, you can see from there. But in this dashboard is a reproduction of dashboard we have in my office, and thanks to the to sensors in the street, in the open spaces, we can have all the data hour per hour about parking. Also with a predict system, if I want to say the number of free places in specific parking in city. Tonight in Florence at 30 past 20, I can touch there. I can say also the fluxes, the total traffic count per hour entering and exiting for the city. So the new goal now is how I can give this system to the citizens, because as the lady told us, the real goal now is how we can engage the citizens to have much more data, much more specific and detailed data to govern the city, also for mobility.
I think that's so interesting, because I think we're in a world now where everybody's beginning to expect to be able to track everything in every single moment. We, by the way, in New York, we have, this is not so much transport related, but it sort of is, because we have a big problem with snow, and there's now an app, and you can actually track how quickly your street is going to get cleared of snow. So people love that one in New York. So I think you're right. Everybody wants to have access to this information, not just governments. So I'd like now to turn to Dr. Oh and tell us a little bit about the developments recently in the Korea's smart city planning and how that plays into some of the things that these two panelists have been talking about.
Yeah, as you may know, in the early 21st century, Korea already initiated smart city policy with the name of Ubiquitous City. When it was introduced, the concept itself was very advanced, even in international standard. So, and thus, the delegation from many countries, including Singapore, visited to learn about it. Now we would like to have a repeat performance, so that when you think about smart city, you can say that I must go to Korea to learn smart city. Last year, against the background of fourth industrial revolution, Korea's President Moon Jae-in placed the developing smart city technologies as high priority executive policy. And we initiate by two things. One is applying state-of-the-art Korea's IoT technology to existing cities. And the other is to implement flagship project as a imaginative greenfield project designed from the scratch. Then we launched the project in two cities. One is Sejong, the other is Busan. In Sejong City, one of main agenda is mobility service, and the goal is to reduce the number of automobiles by two-thirds compared to similar sized cities. Once autonomous vehicle is introduced, car hailing service will be main tool of mobility service in Sejong City. Yeah, this is recent development in Korea.
And what sort of has that meant in terms of working with the private sector?
Yeah. For
Between government and private sector, what new kind of partnerships do you need to make all of this happen?
In case of mobility, Korea has a famous car manufacturer, Hyundai Motors, and even though while Korean government initiates smart city policy, but development of technology itself is the role of private sector. Hyundai Motors play a role to develop autonomous vehicle. This year, autonomous truck was driven for 40 kilometers successfully, and I guess that Hyundai Motors and other Korean car manufacturers will be an initiator in mobility service with its autonomous vehicle. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think those kind of partnerships are increasingly important, and you know, I think the challenge for cities as well is sometimes not to just have a procurement role with the private sector, but actually see it as more of a partnership. So I wanted to move on now to Xavier, and because I think we are one of the things I mentioned earlier that I wanted to raise in all of this is really making some of these technologies much more accessible and affordable. So talking from private sector point of view, how is a company like FCC sort of contributing to making electric vehicles, for example, affordable?
Well, right. Social awareness and regulatory framework point to a progressive restrictions of pollutant vehicles into urban areas. So it generates a necessity in municipalities to introduce electric trucks in their urban services fleets. So, but however, high investment cost and technological uncertainty are obstacles in this aim. In FCC, we have been developing technologies in electric trucks since 1974, and now we have many electric vehicles working in our municipal services, such as sewage cleaning or fountain maintenance. If we focus in garbage collection, we find that a garbage truck must run a lot of kilometers picking up bins in their work routes. They have to load as many tons as their capacity and regulatory framework allows. And they have to run long distances to discharge their load to the treatment plants. To do these three things at the same time, we designed an onboard ecological battery charger that permits them to finish their routes with guarantees. Okay? At the same time, this allows to work morning, afternoon, and night shifts without stopping for the battery charging pit stop. Okay? It means also that we have smaller batteries, because given that we have the battery charger, we don't have to add extra capacity to our batteries to guarantee that we finish the routes without the risk of running out of energy. And at the same time, we can also have smaller batteries as long as we can recharge them in the trips to the plants. Okay? This is about batteries. At the same time, it permits saving money to municipalities because they can have less trucks because they don't need to stop the trucks for charging times. Okay? At the same time, another aspect, the durability of electric trucks are almost double than the durability of a combustion engine truck. Okay, this is because a combustion engine have a lot of wear because it's continued work. It makes that it works different than electric car. Okay, and well, that's all. Okay.
So what I mean. Here we're talking about sort of clean transportation. So there's a climate change benefit for all of this. What do you think is the real potential for cities to actually save money, as you say, through maintenance, through other things? What's the upfront investment versus the return on investment, as it were, by moving to these cleaner vehicles?
Well, you can save money through different ways. One of them is because the useful life of electric car is much longer. So the annual cost if you amortize them in a longer period, is lower, okay? At the same time, we developed a technology in recycling trucks. So what does it mean? When a truck is at the end of its useful life, we can reuse the chassis and build another brand new recycled electric car with that chassis. It means a saving of 20% approximately. The possibility of amortize in more years can mean a saving of 35%. So when you really add all these savings, at the end, the real annual cost is not so higher than with a conventional truck.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Oh, this was something that you and I were talking a little bit about earlier, you know, this conflict between the cost and the benefit to citizens. How are you finding those, you know, the investment sort of pays off in benefits to citizens through those investments?
This is the issue of affordability, and affordability can be conflict with the profitability of private companies. To overcome this conflict, I think that standardization can be one solution. That with standardization, we can lower the cost of manufacturing and diffusing the cost of operation. In case of autonomous vehicle safety standard, UN organization, I heard that UN organization started to look into the issue to make standard safety net. Yeah.
So yes, it's I think it's always that balance, isn't it, of making the business case, as it were, up front for the benefits down the road. I think the other thing that I sort of want to bring into the discussion here is, you know, we've talked about public-private partnerships, technology, but of course then there are the citizens who are actually using these technologies and who are going to be part of this. You know, how do you develop systems that can then bring citizens into even the process of design? And Dario, I'd like you to talk a little bit about how this is working in Florence, and I think a new app you're going to announce, right?
Oh, yes. I would like to announce just today in Barcelona the new application we are launching just today, for not only for Florentine people but also for all people visiting the city, because it's not just a question of infrastructure. We cannot just plan and realize. We have also to manage. And when we talk about, for example, the streets and public spaces, our city has approached the city maintenance with an holistic view, with a multi-level governance system for a proper orchestration of all the actors of smart mobility. That means merging public mobility utilities, involving city mobility departments. So nearly 70 million euros public tender for the street maintenance, with street key performance indicators and service levels, have been procured this year with a pluriannual contract, a global service. Starting today, every citizens in Florence are empowered with this new app called Plus Firenze, allowing them to report any service request to remove obstacles, material obstacles, also immaterial obstacles. So people could report to the municipality the address of problem registered, and also the category. So we are talking about street maintenance or horizontal or vertical signals, etc. And we have a backstage system that register the request, the reports coming from citizens, and we can give to the citizens also a feedback. So the citizen is really a concrete collaborator of the mayor with the reports, and the mayor have to give feedback about this specific report. And the georeferation, so the indication also with the support of image, because citizens with the iPhone could take a picture and send the picture through the application. So it's very simple system, but I think very efficient, also special for the medium, small city. I don't know how probably Chinese people in Shanghai could use this system, but it's probably not question
Maybe
of
in different areas.
yes,
Yeah.
we can experiment it also in quarters or in different areas.
In Korea, we also have same system. Citizens can contribute for
Yeah.
removing dangers in the street or other thing. So maybe we share advanced system.
Best practices.
Actually,
Good.
many of the cities today with these technologies, they have these applications.
Yes, absolutely.
Not only this, to co-create the city services is now what mayors and city managers looking for. That's why these applications are some of the tools to use it. In Dubai, we called it Majlis. Majlis, it means the place where everyone gathered, and anyone from anywhere in the world, they can send an idea that they want to see it implemented, and the ruler himself, he has a 14 days for every entity to implement that idea. If it is not yet implemented, you can send a picture or a location or whatever. So I believe all these tools, these technologies, making our life much easier as a city managers.
No, it's great to hear that everybody's sort of thinking along the same lines. Before I forget, actually, while we're on the subject of apps, don't forget to put some questions to the panelists on the apps, because I'll be looking at the tablet later on and taking questions through that app. So please start thinking of your questions and putting them down on that app now. But just as a follow-up to that, I think this is such a really interesting area. Obviously, as you say, technology is fantastic. It allows citizens to say, okay, there's a hole in the road, and I've taken a picture of it, and there's a GPS marker, so we know exactly where it is, and I'm going to send it to government. Now, what is the challenge here? Because suddenly, you may be receiving a deluge of complaints, requests, whatever. Do governments actually have the capacity to respond, and what's the challenge that if they don't? And I'm going to throw that to either of you to answer that.
Actually, in Dubai, as I said, we used to have this system of complaint and suggestion. But in recent years, we moved from only a complaint to co-create our city with our citizens. That's why we changed even the name of that system, and we called it the Majlis, because in our culture, Majlis means the center of our house where we receive others. And as I said, we have specific KPIs for every government entities. They need to be transparent. They will publish in media that we receive this much ideas or this much of complaints, and this much we close, this much we rejected because it's been already handled. And this dashboard is with the ruler of the city. He sees it on a daily basis to know exactly what's been done in our city. Not only this, on top of it also, we have what we called it the happiness meter. We believe in UAE and in Dubai that our role as a government is to serve happiness to our people. That's why it is so much important for us. The KPI number one is to measure people happiness. That's why when everyone in Dubai receive a service or a transaction, we will ask him, was this experience a happy experience for you? And we measure it in a dashboard as a city map to know exactly where are the areas of the city that people feel more happier or less, and we take action to solve those issues on spot. And as I said, this dashboard is with the ruler, with every sector leader, to know exactly where are the issues in our city.
And I imagine that for most people, happiness is not being stuck in a traffic jam.
Absolutely.
That was going to be my next question, actually. And maybe, Xavier, I'll ask you a little bit about this, because you're coming at this from the sort of municipal services side. But, you know, you're not dealing with perhaps citizen requests. But how can technology, this kind of technology, you know, improve the, I don't know, the efficiency of the routes, for example, of the trash collection vehicles, that kind of thing? What's the potential for apps and technology to increase efficiency of mobility in that respect?
Well, it does in some aspects. No? Obviously, all the administration nowadays makes the contractors have a GPS on all the trucks, so that control that we have is good for us, because we also control our drivers, our trucks, and that's a way that is better for us to work. And at the same time, if they give us the information of many points with trouble, we can prepare a good route, an efficient route, in a way that our trucks interact the less with the city. So we don't disturb the cities. You have to think that urban services trucks are not cars, are big trucks, so they don't help to the comfort of the city. So as less they work in, is better.
And as a New Yorker who lives there, I know that the 6 a.m. garbage truck going by your window is not a thing of joy. What is the potential, Dario, as well? And I'm not sure if this app would do this, but to maybe through artificial intelligence, machine learning, to build up a picture of where people want to go and to be able to respond based on, you know, you can maybe say, well, everybody's using this route but not this route.
Yeah.
Is technology going to help us to fix
yes,
that?
of course. We have also very good examples coming from private experiences like Google Maps or Waze. For example, we are concluding a collaboration with Waze to have a specific focus on Florence, because people with Waze application could send information directly at time, but at the same time they can have through the administration, thanks to the collaboration with Waze, through Waze application, much more information about, for example, accidents or problems you have in one road, and if you give to the citizens many information, they can organize themselves to find the best solution in order to for the street,
Sort of crowdsourcing
exact
model, yeah.
But I think for the future, another good project should be for the smart mobility, a system to give to the citizens a different solution using different public transports. For example, I would like I have to go to the hospital from my house. How many public transports I have to take, I must take, and technology could tell me 1, 2, 3, and solutions. It could tell me also different solutions. For if I want a green solution, the system could suggest me much more public transport, electric transport. Or if I want relaxed solution, so I have much more time, I can choose other transport or sharing mobility, car sharing, or also electric taxis. So we must start from people. Person is at the center of the system, because people know very well the needs. I have to give to the people much more solution, because the people know how they can move, how they want to move, to reach destination.
It's a
Then
question
I
of
think
choice.
I need to invite you to come to Dubai to see some of
Dubai
our
is perfect.
solutions around this kind of transportation, because today we have an app that
Yes.
will personalize your journey, whether using public or non-public transportation.
Yeah.
And I believe this is what technology can do for us today.
But anyway, the future of a city is city without private vehicles. This is the future of cities in the world. No private vehicles, only public transport or sharing mobility.
So I can imagine a scenario where, going back to the citizen choice, you might even say, okay, well, I've got time on my hands. I'd like to choose a route where I get to meet as many people as possible. It's a social transport route. So that would be one to add to that selection.
Good idea.
Now, I mean, some of these things, obviously, you know, we're talking about integrated transport. We're talking about mobility as a broad picture. And as we know, it's not just about vehicles. It's about energy. It's about infrastructure. It's about all the different elements of the city coming to work together. So I wanted to ask you folks from the government side of things, what are the challenges in a sector that has been traditionally very siloed, and where you have one department here, another department there, and now they really all have to talk to each other much more? I mean, Dr. Oh, what do you see as the challenges of getting different ministries to talk to each other?
Maybe the issue of siloing. Many countries experience similar things. Korea or Dubai experience the same thing. And in case of smart city policy in Korea, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport initiate the policy, but we organize kind of smart city team with Ministry of Science, Ministry of Industry, and together we have regular meetings to resolve the kind of conflict and different opinions to make one solution which we can agree with. Yeah.
And I think today, thinking of having a driverless metro, a driverless taxi, a drone taxi, a hyperloop that will bring a 1 hour and a half journey to a 10 minutes journey. And we're still thinking about silos between government entities. And I do believe that today, the advanced technologies that we have, not in the future, I mean today, like blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, can solve many of these issues. These technologies are already disrupting many industries and many sectors. Today, like seeing all these new management style, like Uberization and Airbnb happening in the private sector, we as government, we should think of how these advanced technology disrupting our day-to-day tasks. In Dubai, we form a new strategy this year called the paperless strategy, that will force everyone, not only outside the government, internally inside the government, to cut down all these paperworks and really utilize efficiently all the technologies that have been embedded for years in our organizations. And the thing that, no, there is a silos between government with sharing data, there isn't any silos anymore. Having a platform like a big data platform, or as we call it in Dubai, Dubai Pulse, that will publish data, APIs that I can link them and convert what we used to call city services into city journeys, wherein if I want to drive a car in Dubai, I don't need to go to a government entity to take a driving license, a car company to buy a car, a financial institute to get financing my car, an insurance company to get insured. Imagine how many times and trips you need to do for all these agencies. Today, converting all these services, something around 100 services into one seamless, integrated journey that you can do it from one click. That is our aim today in Dubai. We started this strategy early this year. Next month, we will see the first 2 journeys, driving a car in Dubai and moving to a new home in Dubai, happening wherein we integrate all the government and private sector, because today a city is not only government. City is a government, private sector, peoples, academia, NGOs, all of them should work together into having a real citizen-centric approach in our journeys.
Which is quite a cultural shift
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
a way.
Absolutely.
It's,
For us, even as a government, we need to think out of the box. The traditional way how we used to perform our duty is not any more applicable. Maybe for me, but not for my daughter, who will come later on to work in the government. She expects to deal the same way how she deal with Facebook and Instagram, posting and liking and enjoying herself. Not a bureaucratic that she sat and waiting for approvals and the cycles of stamps and meetings and briefing happen every day.
I'm going to open it up to questions in a couple of minutes. I just want to get back to the question of sort of affordability, really, and I think I'm going to ask you to respond to that, because you're in a city with very ancient government that's always been, thinking about citizens and how they interact. What are the challenges of we talk so much today about the problems of not so much poverty but inequality. And how do we make these new systems accessible and affordable to everyone?
This is another big challenge, because digital divide is a problem for the cities in the country. So technology must be a simple solution to make people at the same level. And
It's funny you should say that, because I'll just gonna, it's a very odd anecdote. I'm always asked to come and moderate at these smart city programs. I only got myself an iPhone a year ago.
Wow.
And what's fascinating about that, I used to use one of those lovely little old Nokia ones, and I was so sad when it finally died, but I finally had to get with the picture and get an iPhone. But what's interesting, given what you're saying, is how little of transport I could use. So I realized I couldn't order an Uber.
Yeah.
I couldn't book get my airline ticket, boarding pass on my, So the digital divide. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I mean, I just think that's such an interesting point.
For example, Florence is a city with many old people. So the over 65 years old are double than less of 18s. And the old people are not smart as young people. So we must invest on education, so digital education, because not all people know how they can use the opportunity coming from technology. So information and education, school, and long life learning. So when we talk about the digital instruments, so how people could collaborate with the city, could increase the quality of using city services, we must talk also long life learning.
Even us as a smart people, we need to learn new things every day.
Yes, absolutely.
At school, no?
Yes, and talk about the digital divide. I mean, being able to access transportation is all going to be through the internet now. You'd be surprised at this, but New York City, you think of as one of the great modern cities of the world. Something like 22% of people in New York City still do not have broadband in their homes, and that's a huge modern city. So it's a very important point. Okay, so I'm now going to open up to questions. I think one of the team is going to bring me a tablet with some of the questions on, but in the meantime, until I receive that, oh, here it is. Okay, perfect. I'm also going to see if there's any real live questions from the audience. And we have one over there. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Barbara, and I'm from Brasilia, which is a very modern city. But then it makes quite difficult for human interaction between citizens. And regarding the title of the today's session, of course, I agree with time and money and environment and security. But I also would like to ask you if we're taking into account how the citizens are going to interact with each other. And because, of course, if I have in the future one autonomous car picking me up in the door of my house, how much the citizens are gonna interact with each other. So that's what I want to say.
Who'd like to take that?
And I believe you don't need to drive anymore. You just sit and enjoy your life. The autonomous cars. I'm not sure if I will use an autonomous car. But I believe it will save us time, because the most precious thing in our life is time. It's not money, it's time. If these technologies will save us time, that I can invest it in sitting and enjoying my life with my lovable people, I believe this is what we want. Thank you.
So I think the battery of my tablet just died. So I've forgotten all the questions.
This is one problem about
Of the technology, yeah.
So I'm going to go for the real live questions again. Anybody else from the audience with a question? No? How many people have been in an autonomous vehicle?
Not me.
There, that's interesting.
Too early, too early.
Too early, okay.
Actually, we have like the driverless metro. And when they started it in Dubai, people were fearing, okay, there's no driver. And they, yeah, and they had to put people just to fake it that they are driving the metro. But today, after 10 years, people are get used to
Yes, yes.
And when we tried autonomous cars in Dubai, people were queuing, wanted to use this experience. Unfortunately, not me yet.
Okay. I'm
In
back.
Korea, early this year, we held Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. At that time, we provided people and participants of Olympic with the opportunity to experience autonomous vehicle level 3. And regarding your question, once I experienced that, I make one big issue to talk about, to talk with other friends. So at this point, the autonomous vehicle contributed for my making friends and making talk with my other colleagues. Yeah.
Now we have a question, a couple of questions, and I think this is on a lot of people's minds, is safety. That's probably the number one issue with some of these new technologies. So I'm going to ask a little bit sort of broad questions about safety, and perhaps start with Xavier, because when it comes to the vehicles that are not, obviously not passenger vehicles, they're municipal vehicles, nevertheless, they're going to interact with the streets. What are the kinds of considerations with the new forms of vehicles that you're looking at that need to be considered?
Well, first of all, before running in the streets, any new vehicle must be certified by the public administrations, so it always complies the security specifications. Okay, so in addition, it's true that in new trucks we not only work on the ecological aspect, but we also work in the security aspects. So in the last tract that we did, that is, in fact, it's here in the Congress, you can see that the cabin is extra low. It's just 30 centimeters from the floor. The glass is completely panoramic, so you can see perfectly well. You have sensors to detect all obstacles, all people that is around. So it's silent, but at the same time, when you're going back, then there's a ring singing. And, well, security is always, although the new, or what we talk about, is electric, all advances in security are always at the same time in parallel.
And also, I think the investment on satellite control, which is another way to have a complete control on.
Yeah,
on the
that's
street.
true. That's true.
With the sensors.
Yes, we can record all the route that our drivers do, and we can see if they drive securely or they don't. Even not only for security things, also for energy consumption. if they drive efficiently or if they don't drive efficiently.
But I think we need a time to make a concrete experiment in city, because it's a very complex
Yes,
system.
it
I
is,
think
yes.
It's
auto
not only
guide
the
without-
vehicle, you know. The vehicle, okay, will put sensors and you make sure that it will comply with the security or safety regulation, but it's the system that you will operate these vehicles. Today, if you are driving a driverless car, it's programmed to take you from A to B. What about if someone hacked that system?
Yes.
So again, we need to make sure that in all our layers, security is embedded, not only in the end product, but in all the layers until the solution, the system, the data, even the policy and regulation we put around this solution. We need to make sure that it is, the security is well embedded in all these.
And that actually ties into a very interesting question somebody asks here, and I think that's part of this broader picture actually, which is, you know, how will you decide who is responsible for any accident? It's going to become, I guess, harder.
Good question.
Maybe I can answer to that question. Alongside with safety issue, we have to think about insurance in the case of accident. Last year, I initiated a study on autonomous vehicle insurance issue, and currently, our conclusion is it's better to maintain the system of responsibility. That means drivers need to remain as being responsible for the accident. It is because when accident happened, the accident should to be responded quickly. So if we place responsibility to manufacturer, the time of response could be longer and longer. So this is our current conclusion, and British government already decided to place responsibility to drivers for autonomous vehicle accident.
I might add one thing here, Sarah. Today, with all these advanced technologies, the technologists are so on the hype and developing and bringing up all these technologies. And us as city managers and even in the private sector, we're also eager to bring and experiment these technologies, wherein the legislative framework is still behind. Such as the insurance policies and more policies around the ethics and the principles of all these technologies, they are still behind. Our lawyers, our courts are still behind. This is a fundamental, or let me say a key, major key, that we are missing in our fourth industrial revolution. We need to focus on the legislative framework to allow us to move faster even.
And I think that's really interesting because as ever, it's never just about technology. It's about the ecosystem that is going to support all of this. Well, I think that voice is probably telling us something. So I'm going to wrap up. But before I do, I'd just like to say, please give a very big hand to our great panel, and thank you for your questions.